just realized something. I had a bad childhood.
Yeah, I know.
What do you mean you know?
Look at you.
What do you mean look at me?
Look at how you stand. People who had good childhoods don't stand like that.
Hi, I'm Christina, and I'm the one you can thank for bringing Emily Ross LPC back on YouTube. I reeled her in, guys. So
Yeah,
what are
thanks
we
a lot.
talking about?
We're talking about where we've been and what's been going on, I think. I mean, it's your idea. So what do you want me to talk about?
I check her out on TikTok because I made her make a TikTok, and it's hilarious. So basically, we're gonna talk about where Emily has been and what this hiatus has brought to light for her. So let's start with that. Where have you been? What have you been doing recently?
I've been depressed, so I took like a hiatus because I didn't feel like I could make good content when I felt so crappy. So I went back to therapy and I was doing that, and I was like, oh, I'm starting to feel better. Maybe I'll make some videos. And Little Miss over here is like, why aren't you making videos about you being depressed?
So let her know in the comments. Do you guys want to hear more about vulnerability from a therapist standpoint, or say yes? I'm trying to encourage her to talk about her feelings as like a therapist, as someone who's kind of been through it, and I think it's really important for everyone to share their experience with depression. So,
And I say, I'm a therapist. I was trained to hear people's feelings. I was not trained to talk about mine.
I think it's generational conditioning. We'll see though. So anyway.
Side with me. Be like, this is stupid and I don't hear anything about this.
Anyway, so keep going. You've been depressed. What have you been doing while you've been dealing with that?
What do you mean, what have I been doing?
Like,
I've been being sad.
Have you been working? Have you been doing any coping?
Yes, I've been working, and working is one of my coping skills. It's actually a trauma response to overwork. So when I join 15 committees and I volunteer for 2,000 things and I work a full-time job and I'm like, oh, I think I should get another job. That's a tell. I talk about tells. Tells are like little hints that you're giving yourself that your mental health is spiraling, and that's a big one for me. And I get called out on that in my family quite a bit.
So why don't you give other examples of tells?
Other examples of tells is not caring how I look. Like I'm on a YouTube video with no makeup on. I don't usually do that. That's a big tell. Right. Not getting out of bed early on a weekend. This one calls me out on it. It's 9 o'clock. What are you doing? I'm resting.
Oh my gosh, because this one wakes up at 6 in the morning and starts singing to the birds. And I go in the room to see what's going on and what we're doing, and she's still in bed, and I'm like, oh, get up. Time to get up.
She does do that, in fact. Like it's 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
That's another tell.
I'll give some of my tells is my room gets really dirty, which is not very like me. That's a tell for me. And I do not work as much as workaholic over here.
And I get irritable, and not a lot of people recognize irritability as a symptom of depression, so that helps me fly under the radar, right? People think I'm grouchy, maybe because I'm working so much, and that works for me, right? Like, nobody knows I'm depressed, they just think I'm grouchy because I work so much.
Okay, so let's talk about the weight of depression let's talk about it on the weight of society, and how it impacts you as a working woman in this day and age with this economy and all of that. Has it impacted your social standing? Has it obviously impacted your extracurriculars?
It did impact a project that I was super passionate about, and that stunk, but it doesn't seem to impact my work. My work is the one place where I can seem to continue to thrive, but it did impact my social life a lot. I would make plans and I would break them and I would not show up, and I would want to do things and I just wouldn't.
And as an extrovert, this is a big deal.
Yeah, that's a red flag for my family who knows me well. So it impacts me that way, but it hasn't had I can't say it hasn't had a financial impact. Therapy's expensive. So there's that.
Coming from a therapist.
Right, therapy is expensive for me too. Healing is expensive, and finding new coping skills, because my coping skills weren't working anymore, and so I had to find new ones. Like I tell my clients, if it's not working anymore, you got to find new ones. And finding new coping skills can be hard, inexpensive, and requires a lot of energy that you don't have when you're depressed.
Tell them what you did today for coping. That's 12 miles.
Oh yeah, walked for 12 miles. I
12.
I would say I run until I'm done, but when I'm depressed, I can't run because I feel too heavy. And if you've ever been depressed, that's going to make a lot of sense to you. And if you've not experienced depression, you're going to be like, that makes no sense. But like everything is heavy, and I can't run like that, but I can walk. So I walk. And so I used to run until I was done, meaning like I had reset, I felt better. I was able to leave past stuff on the trail and kind of carry on. And so we were walking until we were done today, and it was a lot.
And we walked the day before. Vitamin D is a great source of
Vitamin D is helpful.
happiness. So tell them about this and why it's been helping you.
So I guess the depression
Show them.
Really, this is called mother hunger, and if you've talked to me in the last like 10 days, I've repeatedly talked about this stuff. Mm-hmm. The depression came because I had a relapse in symptoms of PTSD, which hadn't happened to me in a really long time. And I mean, like nightmares, intrusive thoughts, all the things, like all of the really hard things about PTSD, and that led me to get really depressed. Partly because it was all stuff that a lot of it was stuff that I thought was already healed, and there was some anger and kind of sadness over the fact that I was going to have to do this again because I don't want to.
That's valid.
Yeah, so I had to go back to therapy and kind of address some of the underlying traumas, which I probably haven't really ever done like the childhood trauma work because I felt like I was fine. Mother Hunger is a great book. It's attachment theory. Kelly McDaniel talks about attachment theory, and traditionally there's like anxious attachment, anxious avoidant attachment. It's about attachment theory, but she adds a new layer to it, an attachment style, what she calls mother hunger, which is really about like it starts in the first 1,000 days of life, and if you don't have like bonding with your mother, how that leads to feeling unsafe and fears and things like that. But that if the abuse or the neglect or the trauma continues to happen through your childhood, that like some things happen, like you don't learn how to be afraid of things that you should be afraid of. So if you've seen my video about not my beignets, I made it into a funny story because that's what I do. I made it into a funny story about how I'm missing that whole fear gene, but I'm missing that whole fear gene because I couldn't be afraid of the people who were taking care of me and survive. So you learn to discount that as fearful, and you end up as an adult, almost 50 years old, putting yourself into situations that normal people would be like, how did you not know that was going to end up bad?
So, would you feel like this book has been beneficial to your healing?
Yes. I mean, yes. It helped give like semantics to or words to or validate a lot of the behaviors that I just thought, I don't know, were just my personality. Really, it showed me the link. And it talked to, I'm not supposed to talk about this part. She says don't talk about this part with your kids. But it talks about how it impacts your own mothering, right? So, because I knew I didn't want to parent the way I was parented, so I tried really hard to not parent that way, but I fell into probably every pitfall she said I would fall into. Like, I needed that book, like, 25 years ago, 26 years ago. I'm reading it really slow because it's intense for me, and I'm doing EMDR therapy, which is also very intense for me. And I don't want to tell you guys any of this, but Christina's making me.
Yes, I said that there's value in vulnerability. Pretty much. That's the short version.
Yeah, so like none of this is helpful, is it? Tell her. None of this is helpful for me, Christina.
Yes. Well, what are we gonna do? What's our next plan for YouTube, and how are we gonna communicate with the viewers again?
I don't know, we had a couple of good ideas today. But so I'm trying to reconnect to feelings, and so one of the ones I have a lot of trouble reconnecting to is fear.
Yeah, I said she gave it all to me in the womb. All of it.
Sorry. I had to get rid of it somehow. I'm sorry. So we were talking about maybe documenting some of the things I've been trying to do to reconnect to fear or to like other emotions.
Yeah, so let Emily know how y'all feel about like little short videos of her on the trail or like the little TikToks or if you follow her on Instagram or Facebook. How y'all feel about that?
Yeah, and tell us what you want to know more about. Like what part of the journey that you're curious about.
And we'll see you in the next video.
Which will be like
What's it
6
about?
months from now.
What's it about?
We'll let them decide. I usually let them decide the content.